Welcome to Community Crypto on CoinDesk TV. I'm your host, Isaiah Jackson, and this week we are discussing the Harlem Bitcoin community. I'm joined now by the founders of Harlem Bitcoin, including Jesse Cervantes, former NYC public school teacher and now professional Bitcoiner, Shakib Farah, owner of Safari Restaurant, and John Logan, New York firefighter and Bitcoin educator. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks a lot. Super excited
how you doing?
to be here.
Oh, yeah. Great to have you all. Definitely glad to have you on the show. And I kind of want to run through really quick, starting with Jesse. How were you introduced to the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency industry?
Early on, probably around 2015, 2016, my roommate, who was a kind of a day trader, started talking to me about Bitcoin. And back then he was talking about Silk Road and magic internet money. And I really didn't know anything about it. I was not a day trader. I was still I wasn't a teacher then, but I would say I was a pleb. I didn't know much about money or finance or anything like that. So I got nervous. I ignored him. He told me about it the next year. I still kind of ignored him. And then later in 2017, I heard it was starting to make news, $1,000, $5,000, 20. And then I just FOMO'd in, wrote it down to 3,500 and sort of figured out if it was a good decision or a bad decision. I think it was a good decision. And now I'm call myself a professional Bitcoiner.
Oh, yeah. Great to hear. Shout out to the roommates. That's how I heard about it as well. And Shakib, what was your story, your origin story for Bitcoin?
Very earlier on around 2011, I had a friend of mine that mentioned to me Bitcoin. And in the middle of the night, around 1 o'clock, I just went on and read the white paper. And right after I read the white paper, I'm like, this is very exciting. And I was thinking, ideally, I used to have a family back home in East Africa that used to send money. And I'm like, this idea of a decentralized finances, this could be your own bank aspect. And it got on right on me. And I was an early investors. Initially, when I tried to buy Bitcoin first time, my screen showed a warning says, like, this is illegal. You cannot buy this one. Right? And a year later, it became legal. And then that's when I bought it a year later. Right on, went on it.
Beautiful. And John, what was your origin story?
Yeah, my origin story is not like these other guys. I'm kind of late to the game, but as we say in Bitcoin, it's never too late. Just heard other coworkers talking about other assets, other digital cryptocurrencies, and I can never get in on the conversation. So I had to go down that rabbit hole for myself in order to really find out what this is all about. So just doing some research and just talking about it with other people. I had some guys talk about, this thing is decentralized. And at the time, I didn't know what that was. I said, well, what's decentralized? And one of the guys says, I don't know. It just sounds cool. We all started cracking up. And I said, it's time to stop the blind leading the blind. I had to really start digging deep for myself and start doing my own research, as they say in Bitcoin. And here I am today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And one great way to do research is to go to meetup groups. And the Harlem Bitcoin group that you all have, I wanted to ask, what led you to starting this group? I'll start with you, Jesse, and we can go back and forth. What encouraged you all to start this group?
Well, I went to Safari Restaurant, Shakib's restaurant one day. It's probably about 2 years ago. And I was probably checking price or something on my phone. I guess he saw it. So he struck up a conversation and we started talking about Bitcoin. It turned out he was like really into it. So we were chatting for a while. And then maybe 8 months later, I was walking my dog and I met another guy walking his dog. And he was the sort of first Bitcoiner I met in the wild. He was even more hardcore than I was. I was very impressed. So I said, you got to meet my buddy Shakib. So then Dan had met John because they had been doing some Twitter spaces. So he invited John along, and the four of us went to Shakib's restaurant only about 3 months ago and just said, hey, let's, what do we want to do? How are we going to do this? And we thought, well, let's just set a date. And then we have to do it. And if 5 people show up, we'll be happy. And we got a little bit more than 5. And so it's been going pretty good from there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Shakib, that conversation you had where it was just a few people, once it got started, from that point, how many members are in the group today?
I kind of lost the track, but it's pretty much is growing, and I think it's like 100 plus that we have it. I mean, you can correct me, Jesse and Jonathan and John, if you remember the exact number. But we have a small growing community on that are interested. But I want to go back a little bit, fast forward backwards to the idea when Jesse and I discussed it. I was interested the general concept of a Bitcoin and all of that. So while we were just discussing and trying to get a community, I went back on kind of did the hard way. Registered myself in a boot camp at Columbia School of Engineering about the Bitcoin and a blockchain aspect, and then I was discussing with Jesse and saying like, hey, this is really it might either cost you a lot of money to learn it, or we can just have a community that discusses and talks about how they can involve this early on in this technology, and how our community might have a place to talk, because this is a really. It's not something that you can get it from one core group. It has to be, and everyone is contributing ideas. And that this is an early on how I learned the idea of a Bitcoin. It's just a friend who told me. So if we have a more friend is talking about in the same concept, then we can really have more ideas and have a community that is growing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we have a decentralized currency, but we also have a decentralized community. That's actually what helps grow it a lot faster. So, and John, I wanted to ask you, do you all make the distinction between Bitcoin and crypto, or all people welcome?
Yeah, well, so that's a great question, Zay. We make a clear distinction that Bitcoin and other cryptos not to be used in the same breath in the same space. It's not the same. All crypto currencies are not created the same. Of course, Bitcoin being that gold standard. And that's something that we talk about. We do make those distinctions. It's very important once you do your own research and you understand that after you go away from thinking that this is some strange internet money. We all know that Bitcoin quickly evolves into a conversation about monetary policy and traditional legacy finance and banking and fractional reserve banking, and that it slowly evolves very quickly into some really advanced topics. And it's really a conversation about money. We all have a relationship with money, but some of us, certainly I don't. I didn't really understand what money is and how it works. And so Bitcoin really starts rolling into a really advanced conversation very quickly. And it's important. So we're trying to create conversations around that. But also we're trying to have conversations with activists and candidates running for office and incumbent legislators, policy makers, and regulators alike, to try to get them to understand, particularly in New York. This is a special community here in New York City, in that we are trying to do something very special. New York is a very particular space with some heavy regulation. And I think that the more that we have some of these folks into our spaces, will help educate them and kind of ease and kind of quell a lot of the fears around Bitcoin, a lot of the FUD. And so we do a lot of FUD busting, a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt busting, particularly around energy and that. But we're just trying to educate plebs, just the people who come in and think this is some strange, funny internet money. And we're trying to educate them to help them understand money, first of all, and then transition into there's a better system. There's something out there that's inclusive. There's something that's open that everyone can participate in. Whereas the current system where it's exclusive and it's been excluding so many for so long. So it's an important conversation, particularly here in New York. And so we're pushing full steam ahead, and we've had a lot of traction so far. So it's really been exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah, I say those are the main three tenets of our sort of community to start with: is education of the people that live here, getting the plebs on board, orange pilling the Harlem community. Second, to overthrow the bit license. I mean, it's a problem. It's a big problem in New York, and it makes things difficult for business owners and for the citizens to have choices of where they store their wealth. And then third, of course, we want to create some kind of circular economy. We want to call it 116th Street, where She Keeps Restaurant, is Bitcoin Boulevard eventually. So that's what we're looking for.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And you both said a key word there: regulations and bit license. Those things right there are synonymous with New York in this industry. Most people think about it that way. What are some of the things that the group can do to combat these regulations and keep them from coming forth in the future?
Well, I'll say, first of all, right now, there's a New York, we're calling it the mining ban. There's a moratorium for 2 years on new Bitcoin mining in New York, and actually has already passed the Assembly, and it's going up for the Senate. There's an alternate bill that's asking for a blockchain study group, and we do support that because that'll at least give them the opportunity to get a better understanding of what it is they're trying to legislate. If you are in New York, anywhere in New York, you can go to the website, the Senate website, and you can actually just click. You can actually just Google and type in New York City mining ban or New York City Bill of Understanding. You can go right to the page. You can click on the envelope and you can email directly your senator or your assembly person. You can make a phone call to your assembly person or especially your state senator. And the third thing you can do is you can tweet at them. You can also, on that page, on the Senate page, you can just click yes or no that you approve or disapprove. All you got to do is put in your information that just to prove you're a citizen of New York State. And so that's for anybody in New York. For people that are local in Harlem and want to get involved, check our community page and come out. If you're already a Bitcoiner, bring a non-Bitcoiner with you. We love the echo chamber. Believe me, it feels great. But we're really about getting some new people in. And so that's another thing you can do.
Yeah, just real quick, Zay, if I could, it's important to tweet and use these social media in these platforms, but it's also very important to meet up. We have to meet up face to face and talk and engage face to face. And so this thing didn't set out to be political, on the onset. But of course, all things are politics, and politics are all local. We like to say, if you don't do politics, politics will eventually do you. Meet up. Assemblyman Clyde Vanell has put out this study bill, like how Jesse had said, and it's looking to see the empowerment zones and how Bitcoin and proof of work mining could empower communities and empower districts, not only in the state of New York, but all around and throughout the country. And so Clyde Vanell actually being my assembly person, I've spoken with him prior about what proof of work mining is and what Bitcoin is. Right. And he understands very well. So we support him in this bill that he's putting out. And so we got to engage. We got to engage with our local legislators and help them really see what this really is, because many of them just truly don't know. So that's what Harlem Bitcoin community is really all about. It's about education first and about meeting and helping empower communities. That's what it's really all about.
Absolutely. And we've heard the news in the past that Mayor Eric Adams, he accepted his first paychecks in Bitcoin. My question is, which one of you guys orange pilled him?
I would love to take claim for that. Yeah, I wish.
Did Shakib, did he come into the restaurant, or what was it?
He didn't. I wish you could, because I would have go a further conversation, not only the accepting aspect of first base tab, but I would encourage him to go further and say, like, for instance, I'm a business owner, and any other small business owners who really want to accept the Bitcoin right now, you will have to deal with the regulations, and I'm more emphasizing on dealing with that regulatory body, and go for. If I give you an example, if I process a $20 of your tab right now, I have to pay a 3% processing of to what do you call those Stripe or processing companies that deals with it. Versus, I would say, Mr. Adams, thank you for accepting your paycheck for that and encouraging the community. But more into it, we want to really this technology to really have no boundaries and being available to every New Yorkers, whether you're small business owners, whether you're individual as well. And I will emphasize more on saying like that. Remember the 2011 when I had that warning message on my screen that said this is illegal to buy. Had that been legal that time, then it would really be better position for a lot of people. So don't repeat that mistake. And early on, New York really needs this technology because, as you know, we are a financial center of the world. And then if we lose this competition to cities in Dubai and Miami, then you really know the bottom line of a New Yorker is in jeopardy.
Absolutely. And times change, but again, you definitely want to make sure that New York is definitely the standard. And right here, we're showing a video from you, Jesse, from Dr. Orange Peel. Tell us a little bit about this educational video and how it's helped your community.
Oh, thanks a lot. Actually, that was the very first presentation we did at the very first Harlem Bitcoin community. And so I needed to show it to the other guys so they could see that it was, that I could do a presentation. So I made it into a video and we put it on YouTube.
You did great.
So, that was my credentials. But I used to be a school teacher, so my sort of, if I have one skill, one of it is sort of breaking down complex ideas into more palatable objectives. And so each of us actually give presentations at the meetings, and eventually we hope to get other people to come in and, give further education, because that's really what it's all about. The main thing is getting new people who don't really know or understand what Bitcoin is on board, so they can begin to participate in the process and hopefully accumulate some wealth.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And what are some of the initial questions you get? What are some of the, frequently asked questions you get from people who are new to Bitcoin?
Well, actually, I do often get they go right to NFTs. And John sort of talked on this earlier. So one thing is to sort of get very clear that they're not all the same thing. It's not just, it's like comparing different kinds of building, like a townhouse to the Empire State Building or something. It's just a completely different thing. And so that's sort of the first step. Then they always ask, like, when will there be millionaires? And so you have to get them onto the low time preference and make them understand It's savings technology. You got to think of it for the future, not tomorrow or next week.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Jesse, that's exactly right. I think. Yeah, thanks. It's exactly right. It's kind of the first questions are, how do you get this thing? How do you hold it? How do you touch it? People can't really understand, but I think what we do, Shakib and Jesse and I, and Dan, of course, our other co-founder, co-organizer, what we try to do is we try to make Bitcoin very relatable. So we try to bring in examples of how this new money really is actually operating in a digital space, a lot like how we're dealing with traditional finance. And so once we give examples, because people want to know, well, how do I touch it? Where does it come from? Once we give them that baseline, it became, you have that oh wow moment, and it becomes relatable. So it's particularly, it can be challenging at times, but I think we're doing a good job. But we've got some great partners. There's been some people, like I said, some traction. There's been some other partners that are coming into our meetups, and they're really pushing the agenda forward. So it's amazing the traction that we're getting. But I think people are listening out because, like you said before, New York is a special place. It's particular. If you could do it here, you could do it anywhere. So we're really excited about kind of like being first to market, I guess, being a little presumptuous in saying that, but kind of doing this in a big way, in a real excellent way here in New York City. And then hopefully we'll gain traction. People start noticing that this is something to be really considered. I always end conversations when I talked about Bitcoin with people and saying that this is something that deserves your attention.
Right. And Shakib, you stated you accept Bitcoin. Do you have customers who, when they see that you accept Bitcoin for payment, they start asking you a ton of questions as well?
I actually haven't started accepting it yet. It's I built my node, and I'm just processing a node that has Bitcoin Lightning soon. So it's a little bit of a gray area now whether I would accept it that or not, because there's the taxes brackets that involve with transactions that we do.
Right.
But if all of these regulatory pieces move forward, then absolutely we'll be looking forward to accepting that one. But now I'm starting a way to say, like, hey, tip me Satoshis, kind of a thing.
Right. Oh yeah. Well, if you don't have the questions yet, get ready for them. They're coming as soon as you start accepting it. And go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, the bit license makes it a little bit difficult too, because it's unclear what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do, and what the tax implications are. Actually, I have I have T-shirts that I have online, and I can't even use Circle in New York State because it's affiliated with cryptocurrency, and even though it uses USDC, I can't even accept that. I can't even have it as a plugin on my website, even if someone's buying from another state. So the rules here make it really difficult for Bitcoiners in New York State. And that's why that's sort of a one of the higher up beyond education, something that's really important to us in the Harlem Bitcoin community. Because it'll help a lot of people, small business owners, larger business owners, and people that just want to be able to pay and avoid the credit card fees. Nowadays, you walk into a restaurant, and you'll see there's a different price if you're paying in a credit card, just like with gas. And Bitcoin Lightning solves that, but we're not even given the choice in New York at the moment to have that opportunity to use it.
Yep, and that opportunity has kind of been stifled by the old guard. However, I'm a former teacher myself. I like to look towards the kids, the future, because I think they'll maybe build it up. Are there any plans for Harlem Bitcoin to try and get this implemented into New York public schools, maybe a summer camp? Are there any discussions about that?
Yeah.
I would say probably not yet, but that's a great idea. That's a really, we actually had a couple of kids come to our first meeting, like a 12 and 13-year-old, some of my neighbors downstairs. Great kids. They're in middle school and high school. So yes, but we're young and scrappy. We've only been around for 3 months. We're building up and it's coming along nicely. And that is a great idea, Isaiah. And I think we will certainly attempt to do something like that as soon as we can. Do it reasonably and have a good curriculum.
Yeah. Something I'd like to add to that, one thing that we are completely open to is partnering with other organizations, other people. I spent months and months, of course, in a platform that you founded, Zay, the BBB, the Black Bitcoin Billionaires, just listening. And so just meeting people and speaking to people like Nigel Roberts and who has crypto camps and other great educational spaces. We're open to partnering. And so this is something that we're building out. Of course, there's the Digital Financial Revolution Tour that's coming to New York City sometime in June. And so these are things that are happening, and we're going to show the world here, starting right in New York City, that this new type of money that can empower all is available, and it doesn't have to be scary. So we have to really create ways, and so education is key. Education about money and about finance. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't get it in school. And so teaching people what money is, how to make money instead of chasing money, trying to increase their income instead of trying to buy assets, which Bitcoin is, and really holding on to it and having a lower time preference is essential. So, we're partnering and, we don't have it now, but I'm sure there's going to be some people later on down the line who are going to want to partner and want to build out some of those things. So we're open to that. And we need to get the education into young people's hands and into the public school system. It's essential.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And one thing I've noticed too is with some new ideas, older people may shun it until their kids bring it up to them. As soon as their kids start talking about it, like, okay, well, maybe I need to know this because they ask me questions I don't know. So I think that's a good roundabout way to get, the people in the community involved. And you took the words out of my mouth, John. I wanted to ask, have there been other New York based meetup groups, maybe in Queens, Brooklyn, other boroughs that you've looked at partnering with long term?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. So, we're working right now. We want to partner with anyone, but we've already started working with people in Queens who have that same desire to want to have real meetups and talk. So yeah, that's all in the works. We were trying to keep it as like maybe branches of Harlem Bitcoin community. Harlem is a really special place. It's been the epicenter of entrepreneurial startups for a long time. So we're looking to partner with anyone. And we're working with some people as of right now, and it's still a new start. So, but it's on the way, and it's inevitable that it's gonna come because people once it hits in more mainstream, people are gonna know what this thing is. They're gonna want to understand what this is and how they can get involved. Everyone wants to be able to use money, and people want to be able to be free to do what they want. And so the legislators need to really dig deep. That's why we support this bill that Clyde Vanell, assemblyman in the 33rd Assembly District. That's why we support that, because he's looking to produce something very tangible. And that tangible thing is, how can we get people empowered, small businesses, into really trying to spark new economy. New business in this economy. So I think it's coming. It's coming pretty quick.
Oh, yes. And Shakib, I'll start with you. What strategies would you or do you give members to make Bitcoin a part of their everyday life? And actually also explain what exchanges are available, because some people don't realize there are a few that are restricted, like Circle, like Jesse said.
Yeah, so in general, I tell, first and foremost, when I'm talking to anyone about Bitcoin, this is really not a financial advice. Therefore, don't even think this is a financial advice to you. This is just my own opinion, and don't take it out of my way, just to protect myself a certain way. And I always tell them that, hey, you should spend that money, or you should buy a Bitcoin, a money that you definitely don't need it very immediately, and put yourself in a position where whatever money that you can afford it, not using it immediately, then spend it, and put yourself in a position where you'd never have to sell it again in a very short term. So my cap is about 2-3 years. This is my strategy. And if you can pass more than 3 years, then you have a strategy to just go for either exponential growth or take the risk, which you obviously a manageable risk that you can lose it.
Oh yeah. And thanks for that disclaimer. Let me go ahead and throw it out there. This is not financial advice, just in case you didn't know. This isn't financial advice. But yes, I think, Jesse, you wanted to comment on that as well?
I was just going to, basically what Shakib said, dollar cost averaging. I always tell everybody, $5 a week just to start, 10, whatever you can afford easily that won't give you a stomach ache. If the price drops by some number, then that's a good way to start. Just whatever, buy one less beer. I mean, it's not that big a deal. And in a few years, you'll be very, very happy. And yeah, I say 4-year time frame. I still kind of go by the cycles if they exist anymore. But basically in 4 years, you're probably going to be all right. More than all right.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I'll just add something just real quick. There's a couple of exchanges that don't work. I think that's part of what you had asked. There's for example, there's Strike, Jack Mahler's Strike, which is a great exchange.
Right.
That does something very particular with the use of U.S. dollars or money, native currency, and uses the Lightning Network. That's unavailable here. It's unavailable here in New York and also in the state of Hawaii. And so the restrictions are there. There's a bunch of other exchanges. But here, if you've got Cash App, that's probably one of the better ones, Bitcoin only, that you could purchase. But yeah, there's a few others that we, of course, don't recommend to people, but we're limited here in New York, but it's going to be a push to try to get more people working and touching exchanges that work for them.
Even with Cash App in New York, you can send Bitcoin. You do own your Bit in a way. You can at least send it to where you want to. But if you try to send it to a Lightning, it won't go. You can't use Lightning.
That's a great point. Yeah. So the Lightning is not even working in New York too. So it's a shame. A great product, but not fully. You can't get the full use.
Oh yeah, it's unfortunate, but these are the battles I think Bitcoin has realized they would have to fight at some point, and I just think it's a matter of time before it's overwhelmingly obvious that you have to at least let people innovate in this space. So not too much to worry about there. And I wanted to jump into the environmental aspect, which a lot of people have been discussing. You talked about it briefly with mining. I'll start with you, John. What are your thoughts on the environmental debate, and how do you explain to people that Bitcoin is actually good for the environment?
Yeah, well, man, that's a powerful question. It's a great question because I think this is where, I'll put it this way. There's a lot of people who come into wanting to run for office and they are jumping on a bandwagon of this. We're going to melt and boil the oceans and we're going to melt all the icebergs and, temperatures are going to rise. I am a huge, let me start by saying this. I'll preface what I'm going to say by saying this. I'm a big tree hugger, nature conservationalist. I love nature. I love the planet and I would love to preserve it. But really, when you look at the facts is that proof of work mining, which Bitcoin is, it incentivizes energy producers to look for more sustainable ways to produce Bitcoin. And that's just the facts, okay? And like we say in Bitcoin, don't trust me, just verify that. And so the real question is, how can we get these big conglomerate monopoly energy producers, how can we disrupt that industry? And that's what this is really all about. It's about a disruption and a dematerializing of these monopolies. And of course, power rarely wants to concede power. And so now we're going to have new players. We're going to have people by using Bitcoin and Lightning. We're going to have people who are going to be competing for the user experience. And even in the energy industry, we have that. In Brooklyn, we have over in Shirley Chisholm Park, we have a methane blow-off, burn-off site.
Right.
And over there, it's being used all over where Bitcoin miners, proof of work miners, they're using that excess burn-off. They're using that to mine Bitcoin. And actually, that otherwise, all that going into the environment would not be good for the environment. And so, this is sustainable energy that we could use, that we could harness. This is wasted energy that we could use and harness. And so my take is that Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, proof of work mining, is excellent for the environment. And don't trust me, just verify. And that's all I can say about that. It's all the information is out there. People who got an alphabet soup after their last name to prove it. And so all we got to do is dig deep into that and not be afraid. And so that's what Harlem Bitcoin Community is about. It's about providing this information, coalescing with the local elected officials and regulators and policymakers, and we're bringing industry experts in so that we could coalesce with them to show them this is what it is, this is the facts of it. Don't trust, verify.
Yes. And Shakib, what do you say about the environmental discussion?
Well, I mean, we've actually seen it early on how the environmental aspect of a Bitcoin came in, and that was an issue for quite a time, and then an issue that were kind of the naysayers were using an excuse for it. But I believe that at some point that the mining aspect is just very evolving, and you know that there's all of those new mining machines that processors, CPUs that are very less energy usage wise. So, I mean, the value aspect of what Bitcoin provides to the environment and to the global aspect of itself, I mean, you have to weight it in, and just kind of when you weight it in, you take the lesser of which one is which, and obviously the value of Bitcoin it contributes into the global aspect. I mean, you would have to say like what are the emission of a New York traffic that comes from a George Washington, and then scale it down to what Bitcoin mining facility can produce it. And unless you prove that one and you say like George Washington traffic has a less a polluting aspect of it than a Bitcoin mining, then I will believe it. But otherwise, I think that the value aspect of a Bitcoin surpasses the energy inconsistency and the energy misusage part of the world.
And Jesse, did you want to add to that as well?
Well, I'll just say that I haven't done a study myself, but my understanding is that in New York, a lot of it's hydroelectric. I think over 70% of the power generation being used in New York State is hydroelectric or carbon neutral. So if it was banned in New York, it's going to go somewhere else, and it's likely that it'll be less efficient and less good as far as for the environment. And second off, sort of like what Shakib said, it's in relation to what I did like very much what Michael Saylor and those other individuals when they wrote recently to the Senate about Bitcoin mining and sort of separating the actual miners is just, it's a data center. They're not actually creating the electricity. They're simply utilizing electricity on the grid. So we're talking about just basically a data center, and then determining where that energy comes from is a matter of within the state. So they can make regulations to force electricity providers to use more carbon neutral or carbon without carbon type energies. But that's beyond, in some ways, what the Bitcoin miners are doing.
Yes, sir. Ed, I thank you for that answer, and I thank you for that explanation. A lot of people don't realize the environmental debate and some of the facts against it for Bitcoin. But I want to thank you all for coming on to the show today. I appreciate it. Hey, we have to end here.
It was awesome.
Absolutely, and hopefully talk with you fellas again soon.
Thanks, Isaiah. It's awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for everything you do.
Thanks.
And CoinDesk.
Thanks, Isaiah. Pleasure to be here, buddy.
And that's it for this episode of Community Crypto. I'm your host, Isaiah Jackson, and every week we're building a global community with local crypto groups. So be sure to tune in every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on CoinDesk TV. See you then.